In this video, I'm gonna show you exactly how I set up my live stream for 2017. So I'm using OBS for my live streams, and this is a video I wanted to create for a long time, and now finally I'm going to share all the updates I did to my setup in OBS since my video came out about 1 year ago on how to set up your live stream using OBS. So this is basically how my OBS overlay looks right now, and that's the one I'm using when I go live 4 times a week. You see I have many profiles. Basically every time I add something new or I want to try something, I'm going to create a new profile. So there's many different profiles that I use. This is basically the technical setup. That's what I'm going to show you in this video. And then of course I have also many scene collections. That's basically how the overlay looks. That's in the scenes collection. If you want to see the basics on how to set up the OBS for live stream, then also check out those older videos here about how to do that. And I'm sorry the quality in those videos wasn't that great at the time. Now to see my settings, you have to go to settings. What this does, it opens this screen right here. So on the general tab, there is not that much information. So you can see that I checked the automatically check for updates on startup. The source alignment snapping, that's basically just for editing, all that stuff that is checked there. And that's basically it, what I have here. So nothing really interesting. In advanced, that is basically just all the default stuff. I haven't changed anything there. Also, in the hotkeys, it's all blank. I don't use that. Now, coming to the more interesting stuff, we're gonna start with video. That's basically how the canvas looks like, and you see it here. I have it set in 1080p, which is 1920 x 1080 resolution. I'm using 30 frames per second for my live streams, not 60 frames per second. Now, I did use 60 frames per second for a while when I was just streaming on YouTube, and especially when I was streaming very active, very fast PC games. That was really cool, but there is a big drawback to using 60 frames per second. Many viewers will have trouble watching you stream. And when I started streaming on Twitch again, I'm streaming on Twitch and YouTube usually at the same time right now. And many people on Twitch had trouble watching the streams because it was very laggy for them with 60 frames per second. Now this was just the base layout. What is more important is actually what do I output to the viewer. And that's what is on this tab here, on the output tab. Big change to my setup in my previous video is I switched to hardware encoder, and you see that here. I used to have the X264 encoder. This uses a lot of PC resources, a lot of system resources, and it can also lead to dropped frames and lag. So if you have a graphics card encoder that performs well, use it. I'm using this guy here. It's on the graphics card on the PC. So I switched this to hardware encoding, and that actually saves a lot of resources on my computer. Then I just left the Enforce streaming service encoder settings checked. And here's the big interesting point you have to pay attention. I rescaled the output to 720p. So my base canvas, that's where I design my overlay, is still 1080p, but I rescale this for the output to 720p, which is 1280 x 720 pixels. Now, why do I do that? It's basically the reason why I lowered the frame rate. It makes the picture a bit smaller, but more viewers can enjoy the live stream, especially if they have a low bandwidth. It's really a problem for them on Twitch, where they cannot enjoy your live stream with a higher resolution. It will be laggy. So why do I still leave the base canvas in the high resolution? The basic reason for that is when I do recordings, I will sometimes record 60 frames per second and the high resolution. You will see that when you get to the recording tab. Then always leave the rate on constant bit rate. It's this guy here, CBR. For streaming, I highly recommend to use CBR because many streaming platforms may have trouble receiving variable bitrate, which would be the second thing here. So leave that on CBR. Then my bitrate is currently set to 3500. My experience was that especially for PC games, it's just less laggy to have that. If I only stream mobile games like Clash of Clans, you can leave that to 3000. Also, if you experience lagging and trouble, you can leave it to 3000. I actually had it on 3000 for a long time. And I just switched it to 3500 when I started playing those fast graphics PC games to have a better picture in those games. And I think 3500 is kind of a sweet spot where the picture still looks great. Very important, the keyframe. Set that to 2. Especially when you're streaming on YouTube, it's very important not to have auto there because YouTube will constantly complain that the keyframe interval is too big. So make that to 2 for YouTube. And that will actually, what it is, it gives a signal every time, every 2 seconds to YouTube so that YouTube knows where the sync points are in your video. And so that the video doesn't start to lag behind because it may play too slow or something like that. So those keyframe intervals are really important. Then, since I have enough CPU, my preset is on high quality and my profile is on high. I really want a high quality picture. The level is on auto. And I also use 2-pass encoding just because I have enough CPU anyways. So that's basically how the live stream looks like that I'm sending out. Now, if you go to the recording tab, you basically see one small difference here. I'm using nowadays the stream encoder. I used to make it different, like having a higher bitrate for recording and stuff, but as I said, 3500 feels like the sweet spot where it still works. I sometimes, if I'm on a special profile just for recording, I may actually increase it to 4500, especially when it's 60 frames per second. But for 3500 as a bitrate and 30 frames per second, you can just use that stream encoder. And the big difference here is I don't rescale the output. So it's not 720p, it's 1080p. So whenever I record a video locally, it will have a higher resolution, a better picture. So that means whenever I want to make a YouTube video later on, I will record it locally and create the video from that because it has better quality than the video I streamed. And then also notice the audio tracks. I have 3 audio tracks. Basically, number 1 is everything that is sent in terms of audio is recorded on that track. Number 2 is the desktop audio. And number 3 is the microphone. So I separated the microphone and the desktop audio. That is very cool because then you can actually turn off noises that may be in the background, just have the voice and really, or make the voice louder compared to the game sound, stuff like that in the editing. So that's really basically for editing, that helps a lot. And then in the audio, I have all those audio set to 192 in the bitrate. So going to the audio, I basically use 2 input channels here, the desktop audio for all the desktop audio and the game sound, and my microphone, which is a Yeti stereo microphone. And that's basically all that is set up here. And that's it for the technical setup of OBS, how I use it. Now, one special addition to that, if you go to the mixer, you will see where I configured those channels. So basically you see there, my microphone, my desktop audio is on 100%. I'm recording both of those tracks on track number 1. I have the microphone on track number 2 and the desktop audio on track number 3. I said it different before, but that's how it is, and that's how I have those on different tracks when I'm recording. Now, you may wonder where I regulate the audio volumes compared to each other. Basically, the voice compared to the game sound. And there is 2 options to that. So basically on this screen here, you can change the decibels of desktop audio and of the microphone so that it won't be 0 anymore. I'm not gonna do this. And then you can play with that and make one louder than the other or less loud than the other. You can also add, like if you want to boost it, you go here on that little wheel and you could add a gain filter and add some gain to one of the tracks if you like. But that's not the way I'm doing it. You may have noticed I'm on both of those audio channels and I'm on 0, and that's because I'm using Windows to do it. So what I'm doing, I'm using the Windows audio mixer basically, and that's where I can switch the loudness of OBS compared to the other input channels, the other audio channels. That's what I'm using to mix the sound, and in OBS itself I have both of them on 0 right now. And then what may be also interesting for you guys is my microphone settings. If you go to this view here, you will see the close and open threshold. That's basically the noise filter, and also how fast it will react to any noises to make a really clear voice. And if there is any background noise, it is filtered out. That's basically the settings you want to have here. That works really well for me. I think I showed you how my OBS setup currently is. That's the real setup I'm going live with. So you know more than before, and I hope that really helps you setting up your live stream. For more details on how these different parameters affect your live stream, go watch the other 2 videos that I already did about that topic. And if you want more advice on how to build your gaming channel, consider subscribing to my channel. There will be more.